Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Reaction channel, and today I'm here to talk about the SpaceX IPO that is occurring on June 12th, or supposedly. All that I ask is if you do enjoy this video, be sure to smash that like button, also subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for the recent support. Let's get right into it. So, this is what I wanted to talk about is SpaceX going to be worth it? What is SpaceX doing? So this is what Elon brings to the table. This is obviously the owner of SpaceX, Elon Musk, founded in 2002. So it's actually been a long time coming, but this company is finally going public here in mid-June. So just about 3 weeks from now, we should see this company actually IPO and be on the stock market. If you look at Tesla stock, the stock is up 33,000% all time. Not a lot of companies are able to do that. They really went from zero to nothing. This company IPO'd a little bit over $1, it looks like. And after that, it's smooth sailing on the way up. So if you guys got into Tesla early, you're probably feeling pretty good right now. But SpaceX generated $18.7 billion in revenue in 2025, with $4.7 billion reported in the first quarter of 2026. That's not amazing. That's not amazing. Okay, I mean, that's good, but it's not amazing. And then you see they actually had right, what it says here, they had heavy capex, and then particularly an artificial intelligence infrastructure following its merger with XAI, which resulted in a $4.9 billion net loss in 2025 and a $4.3 billion loss in Q1 2026. And if you go up here, you remember they have $4.7 billion that they recorded in the first quarter of 2026. They really only got to keep, what would this company make, $4 million or $400 million? I mean, it's not that impressive, when you actually break things down. So especially for a company of this size, which they think they're going to IPO at a price of $1.5 to $2 trillion. So this is definitely going to be an expensive company. Some interesting news, we see SpaceX actually delayed its Starship V3 launch after last-minute technical scrub at Starbase, and we saw that it was actually going to launch its first ever Starship V3 mega rocket today. So that's some decent news for SpaceX, but this company really makes its most money from Starlink, so this is not the biggest news of all time, their satellite system. But at the same time, this definitely is a big part of the company, and it goes to show space is going to be a big thing for SpaceX, obviously. And we see this is a very, very interesting part of SpaceX, is that this is their artificial intelligence, which was founded by Elon Musk. This is what they use. It's called XAI. It was originally established as an independent venture, and the company focuses on building AI models to understand the universe and is designed to act as a truth-seeking alternative to our mainstream AI companies like OpenAI and Google. That doesn't sound like dollar signs to me when I read understand the universe. So that sounds more like a passion project, which is awesome. But same thing with OpenAI and same thing with Google Gemini. These aren't making a ton of money. They're very powerful tools, but they aren't using the AI to make a ton of money. How can you put a dollar multiple on this? We see that he actually evaluated his company's artificial intelligence sector at 26.5 trillion total addressable market. So you got to think, is this really a accurate figure of how much of the market he's going to address? I don't know. I don't think so. But let's get into the reaction video for today right here. Okay, so this is SpaceX reveals IPO filing. This is what the video, we're going to react to today. There's a little bit of news here on Thursday today. So if you guys do enjoy, all that I ask you, smash that like button, also subscribe to the channel. And there's a more in-depth video on SpaceX on the main channel. If you guys do want to check that out, be sure to look at that, Miles Talks Finance. But let's get right into the video.
SpaceX taking a very big step towards what's almost certain to be the biggest IPO ever. I want to get straight over to Leslie Picker. She's got the perspective. She's been going through all of it. What do you see as the biggest highlights, Leslie?
Hey, Andrew, good morning. Yeah, after being filed confidentially, SpaceX flipped its S1 public yesterday, giving a long-awaited peek into the 24-year-old company's financials. SpaceX generated $18.7 billion in revenue last year. That was up 33% from the prior year. In the 3 months through March, SpaceX generated $4.7 billion in revenue and a net loss of $4.3 billion, nearly the same.
Just like the numbers we went over, and look at the long-term debt. It's almost $30 billion. Their long-term debt is more than what they made in revenue just in 2025. It's pretty much double, so keep that in mind.
Same size. The company also showed long-term debt of $29 billion. Still, SpaceX is seeking a valuation around $1.5 trillion, and that's on some of the conservative side, based on some of the sources I've spoken with. That implies a multiple of 80 times last year's revenue. But there appears to be more growth coming down the pike. SpaceX said that Anthropic will pay $1.25 billion.
This is a common thing with Elon Musk too. He says, oh, next year we're gonna have this. You see it with Tesla over and over again, which has a 220 forward PE. Keep that in mind. But you see it over and over. Next year we're gonna have self-driving cars. The year after that, we're gonna unleash our new model. So there's a lot of things that he says that sometimes come true, sometimes don't. But you got to take this with a grain of salt. Okay.
Dollars per month through May of 2029 as part of a compute deal that was announced earlier this month, and the capacity will ramp over the next few months at a reduced fee, and this agreement can be terminated by either side with about 90 days notice. Well, most of SpaceX's revenue currently comes from Starlink, satellite business. It says in the prospectus that it has, quote, the largest actionable total addressable market, or TAM, in human history, which it quantifies at 28.5 trillion. And the biggest component to that TAM, the company says, is from AI, which it estimates at 26.5 trillion. And that would span infrastructure, consumer subscriptions, digital advertising, and enterprise applications. So this IPO, like many of the smaller listings that came before it, will hinge on the validity, or at least the investors' perceived validity, of these big dreams. Andrew.
Yeah, this is a very dream-driven IPO, I think. Coming out of the gates at $1.5 trillion, $2 trillion, and having a revenue of not even $20 billion in a single year, and putting yourself, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
So there's a whole bunch of other things in there to me that were fascinating beyond just the profits and losses, or in this case, still the losses, but just what the revenue trajectory looks like. The idea of retail investors getting access early is fascinating, and I think it's a big experiment. I'm curious what you're...
This is great for me and you watching this video. We're going to get early access as a retail investor, and I still think there's money to be made on SpaceX, like I had on the video on the main channel, but is there a lot of money to be made? I think in the beginning, maybe, if you get in at the right price, there's always money to be made in any single stock, but as a long-term buy, just from the IPO, I don't know.
Hearing on that front, there's the governance question. This is a company that is genuinely going to be controlled by Elon Musk, so much so that technically the company doesn't even need to have independent directors, and what you think that ultimately means. What are you hearing on those fronts?
In terms of retail, I was told that it could be up to 30% of allocations could be retail, and they list a variety of brokerages that they'll be doing that through. Morgan Stanley is directing a lot of this program. Of course, they own E-Trade as well, so you can expect that to be a key component. I had also heard that retail across the pond in maybe the UK and Canada and Japan would be a key component of this as well, kind of garnering retail support, not just here in the US, but also abroad. In terms of the governance, very unique here, not unlike things we've seen at other Elon Musk companies. I believe he'll have about 85% of the control after this company goes public. We should get more details about governance too as the filing gets amended over the course of the next few weeks. That's something that has been out in the press for a while, just the unique governance structure and the ability to remove Musk. It's something that some of the pension funds have really balked at. They're not buyers of IPOs, but they're buyers of indexes. And if this company is included in the index, they could be essentially forced owners of.
And this company could be included in the index very fast. Is it going to be a huge portion of the index? No. But it could be included in, the NASDAQ 100. It could be included in triple Qs. There's a lot of funds that might be forced to buy some SpaceX stock.
SpaceX. And so they said that the governance structure that had been out there in reports is something they were not fond of. Whether it's enough to really, prevent this company from filling its order book remains to be seen, but probably unlikely, just given the nature that this is SpaceX, this is Musk, and people have really gotten used to that.
Leslie, let me ask you this about the retail piece of it. There's part of me that loves it in that, you get the idea of democratizing an IPO and people getting access at least earlier than some of the institutions might otherwise, and allocating it that way can be seen as a positive. At the same time, I think there's been a question about whether you think retail investors ultimately stay in. Maybe, do they have diamond hands, if you will. And the reason I ask is Bill Ackman's IPO recently, he actually approached it by trying to offer more shares early on to retail investors. And they ultimately flipped it very quickly, and it wasn't positive. And so I just wonder what you're hearing on that front.
Yeah, no.
I think retail investors are going to tend to flip this one very quickly as well. Because, I mean, you kind of, as someone that doesn't have as much money as these institutions, you got to allocate your money a little bit more sparingly. So, you get the stock and then you make a little bit of profit, get rid of it. It's a pretty good trade-off.
You're spot on there. And the old school playbook for IPOs, especially big IPOs, was to really lock up a concentrated book of allocations with long-term holders that the bankers can trust and that they know won't flip it. Usually hedge funds were deprioritized. Retail was absolutely deprioritized in big listings like this. So 30% would absolutely be much larger than is typical for a deal of this size. And based on what I've heard, there is, of course, the risk of them flipping. On the flip side, I think there's this idea that retail owns a lot of Tesla, and therefore, it would make sense to extend that to SpaceX. But to your point, with these...
I think Tesla stock is going to drop pretty big when SpaceX IPOs because all the money that is going to be put into that, with the hopes, I made a bunch of money with Tesla, let's do the same thing with SpaceX. Yeah.
We don't know what the float size will be quite yet, but based on the numbers that I've heard, somewhere between 50 to 75 billion. And then if the, valuation is, say, upwards of 1.5 trillion, you're looking at a really, really small float. And when you have a supply demand dynamic like that, you do risk additional volatility, especially if you don't have as great of a sense of the trustworthiness of the people who bought in at the IPO.
So really good video right there. Lots of information on SpaceX and, gives you a lot on what the company actually does and how much money they're making and the valuation that Elon Musk thinks is deserving for them. So that's all I have for today's video, guys. If you did enjoy, be sure to smash that like button. Also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate the support. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.